Zoos are a controversial subject. Some people love them because they get to see a wide range of animals in a short period of time with a relatively low probability of the animals trying to eat them. Some people hate them because they consider the animals prisoners, and not all zoos, if we're being honest, treat the animals ethically. Now, some animals also don't particularly care for zoos. In fact, animals escaping from zoos is actually common enough that I had to split my original video concept into multiple animal groupings to avoid making an hour-long video. I'll start the Great Animal Escape series with apex predators. The times that several animals that rank highly on nature's perfect murder machine top 20 list got loose from their enclosures. Animals that can cancel your membership to this plane of existence with minimal effort. I will give you warning up front that not all of these stories end well for the animals or the people involved. Some of the escaped animals hunted other zoo animals, attacked or killed the zoo staff that were trying to contain them, and some of the animals in the end were killed by the zoo staff, or by police who were called in to deal with the animals. An Andean bear named Ben broke free from his enclosure at the St. Louis Zoo before the zoo opened for business on February 7th, 2023. The bear was recaptured after about an hour and a half of wandering around, and they returned him to his enclosure. His bear enclosure met safety standards, but he managed to damage some metal mesh in his enclosure, causing a cable to fail. This provided him a path for escape. They reinforced the mesh with metal clips rated for around 204 kilograms, 450 pounds, but he was able to remove these clips as well and escaped again on February 23rd, 2023. That time, the zoo was open, and they had to shelter the public in buildings while Ben wandered around. After about 50 minutes of being a zoo tourist, Ben was tranquilized and returned to his enclosure. The St. Louis Zoo decided at this point that having a bear that semi regularly escapes and roams around the park probably isn't the best idea. After all, a bear has the speed, power, and toughness of approximately one bear, which is bad news if it encounters one human who, for some reason, doesn't appreciate what the speed, power, and toughness of approximately one bear means. They decided to send Ben to the Gladys Porter Zoo in Brownsville, Texas, USA. That zoo has a history of working with Andean bears and has an enclosure with a moat that apparently keeps the bears from escaping. This is despite Andean bears actually being strong swimmers, so I'm not really sure how that works. That being said, I didn't see any follow up articles in my research about Ben escaping from the Gladys Porter Zoo, so as far as I can tell, he's living his best escape free bear life in Texas. Sometime during the May Day holiday in China in 2011, three young leopards escaped from the Hangzhou Safari Park. Initially, the zoo did not report the missing cats for a few days. It was actually residents of the city spotting the leopards roaming the city and reporting it back to the zoo that got the initial warning to the public, and the search for the animals started. Search parties were formed to try to capture the animals and return them to the park. One was captured a couple of days after the initial search began. The second was recovered after about a month, although it was found to have a significant wound on its leg. No indication of what wounded the animal was ever discovered. The third panther was never recovered. At one point, they released 100 chickens to try to bait the creature into presenting itself so they could recapture it. The cat either didn't or couldn't take the bait. There was speculation in the press that the animal likely couldn't have survived on its own in the wild because it had never learned to hunt. Now, my parents have a house cat that was born to an indoor cat and has absolutely never seen the outside for longer than a few hours, but it still hunts bugs and toy mice. The hunting instinct in cats is strong, even if they're fed regularly. I suspect there's probably a leopard just roaming around China somewhere. Fortunately, unless the escaped leopard was a pregnant female, they shouldn't have to worry about an invasive infestation of leopards. They might have to worry about an infestation of feral chickens, though, because they did just let 100 of them loose, and I doubt one leopard could take down 100 of them by itself before enough got away to start a flock. The Taronga Zoo has what they call a roar and snore program. This allows people to camp on cliffs that overlook both Sydney Harbor and some of the animal enclosures at the zoo. It's all fun and games until and unless the animals get loose, which is exactly what happened on November 2nd, 2022, when a lion and four cubs got out of their enclosure. The lions were still in an area separated from the rest of the park by a 6-foot fence. While I doubt that would really slow down an adult lion, it may have at least slowed down the cubs briefly. The small pride was spotted by security cameras, and the zoo's Code 1 alert response was activated. Within 10 minutes, zoo personnel were escorting the roar and snore guests to safety. The adult lion and three of the cubs returned to the enclosure of their own accord. The fourth cub did have to be tranquilized, but was returned to the enclosure otherwise unharmed. Now, this story provides a good example of a zoo having a protocol in place, following it, and resolving the situation quickly with both humans and animals being unharmed. Aside from some poor head zookeeper probably getting woken up and shitting bricks hearing that one of Africa's top predators was basically free to do whatever it wanted, everything wound up being fine because of proper thought and foresight. Unfortunately, though, foresight isn't the best word to describe our next story. In 2007, the San Francisco Zoo had a 4-year-old Siberian tiger named Tatiana. This tiger had already severely injured a zookeeper, so this was an animal that was not afraid to choose violence. The height of the wall in her tiger enclosure was not up to safety standards and was, in fact, less than half the recommended height. That will be important shortly. I feel like there's an engineer somewhere who designed the enclosure that maybe should have researched how high is a tiger's vertical leap and either didn't or screwed up the unit conversion. On Christmas Day in 2007, three men who were drunk and at least one of whom had consumed marijuana decided it would be a good idea to taunt the tiger. Apparently, this is a common thing for people to do in zoos. Oh, look, it's an animal that can rip me to pieces if it can get to me, but it can't get to me. Let me assert my false superiority over it. I think it's pretty petulant and cowardly behavior, and it definitely doesn't justify what happens next in the story, but that's my take on it. Some news reported that the men also may have thrown objects at the tiger, and there were sticks and a pine cone that were foreign to the exhibit in the enclosure, but it was never confirmed they actually threw the objects at the tiger. The surviving men did admit to yelling and waving at the tiger, and one of the men's shoe prints was confirmed to be on the railing above the exhibit. They definitely wanted the tiger's attention, even if they didn't throw the sticks at it, and as the old saying goes, be careful what you wish for, you might get it. Tatiana, who already had one human attack to her name, decided she'd taken about 105% of the allotment of bullshit she was willing to put up with that day. She remembered that she does, in fact, have the eye of the tiger, was ready for the thrill of the fight, and rose up to the challenge of her rivals. Tatiana got herself out of the enclosure. Based on the claw mark evidence, it appears as though she leapt to the top of the wall, was able to catch herself, and get enough of a grip with her hind claws to be able to get the leverage she needed to get over the wall. Now, the only thing between the tiger, which is an animal made of muscle, anger, and sharp objects, and the three humans is time and space. And tigers are excellent at closing space in almost no time. Tatiana then proceeded to maul all three men, one fatally. The two surviving men, a pair of brothers, retreated to a cafe at the zoo to seek help. The tiger, likely following the blood trail, left the deceased behind and walked past a warthog exhibit full of potential prey to continue mauling the brothers. It's highly unusual for a tiger to leave its kill if it's intending to eat, so it was probably either hunting for sport or revenge, not food. The police were called, and when they arrived, they found the tiger sitting down next to one of the badly injured brothers. It resumed attacking when the first police officer showed up, so the officer shot the tiger. Several more police showed up, and the tiger broke off its attack to engage them all. One hail of bullets later, and Tatiana was no longer a threat. Now, I get there are people out there that will be angry about the tiger being put down this way. I think the police in this case had no choice, though. The tiger had already fatally mauled one person, mauled three others, and was probably moving to maul the police. It also was wounded by the initial shot, which was fired in defense of the person, so the tiger is pretty much now in kill or be killed mode. The police really had no choice but to respond in kind. Also, people will blame the people for taunting the tiger. Pro life tip: don't taunt a top tier predator because you think it can't get to you. If it really wants to, it probably can get to you, especially any type of cat. And while I have no sympathy for these guys, I don't think it's fair to blame them for the attack. The fact that the enclosure was 1 meter high, or about 3.25 feet, and it was supposed to be at least 2.2 meters high, or about 7.2 feet, was the ultimate cause of this. The zoo was fined by the US Department of Agriculture, who for some reason oversees zoos in America, and settled out of court with all three victims. In Tbilisi, Republic of Georgia, on June 13th, 2015, several hours of intense rain caused massive flooding. They basically received 2 months' worth of rain in a few hours. This resulted in flash flooding that claimed the lives of 20 humans in the city and left many homeless. Up to 300 animals at the Tbilisi Zoo also lost their lives, either directly as a result of flooding or by being shot by police who had been called in to assist with the situation. It's unknown how many animals died directly from flooding and how many escaped, but listed amongst the escaped animals were wolves, lions, tigers, jackals, jaguars, and a hippopotamus named Beggy. A bear was found clinging to an air conditioner unit halfway up a building, and a hyena was found on some guy's balcony. Many of the animals were killed by the police, but some were recaptured. One white tiger did fatally maul a man on June 17th prior to being shot dead by the police. There was criticism of the police for basically shooting the escaped animals on sight, but I think this is another situation where police don't really have stockpiles of animal tranquilizer. They have an emergency situation where top tier predators are on the loose and panicked, and the zoo's stockpile of sedatives was inaccessible. They had to make a command decision to protect people. Efforts could have been made to subdue the animals rather than shoot them, but given the circumstances, I can absolutely understand why they used lethal force. Although, I do want to talk about that hippo. I know for the purposes of this video, hippos aren't technically apex predators because they're herbivores, but they hold the murder high score in Africa for non human mammals and are notoriously territorial and aggressive, so I'm including the story here. Becky was spotted just wandering around Tbilisi eating roadside vegetation. She did manage to avoid getting shot by bullets, but only because one of the zoo directors called a friend, who called a different friend, who was a bear conservation expert. With the zoo's tranquilizers unavailable, the bear expert was asked to, quote, bring all the drugs you have, which is a sentence that basically means whatever is going on probably isn't good. They decided rather than try to completely incapacitate Beggy, they would give her a half dose and try to cajole her into a trailer. The idea was that the sedative would calm her, making her easier to work with. Plus, a full dose of sedative would have required moving an unconscious nearly 1.5 ton hippo, and good luck with that. Hippos, after all, have approximately half the speed of one bear and the power and toughness of approximately one shitload of bears. Hippos aren't going to do a damn thing if they don't want to. Fortunately, they were able to convince Becky to allow herself to be recaptured and moved back to the elephant enclosure at the zoo while they tried to figure out what to do with her. And for our final story, another example of flooding near a zoo, and another checklist of horrifying animal escapees. Only this time, it wasn't. Flooding hit the Eiffel Zoo near Pronsfeld, Germany around June 1st, 2018. Two lions, two tigers, a jaguar, and a bear were thought to have escaped their enclosures due to flood damage. Needless to say, the protocols for dangerous predators that can unsubscribe people from the concept of breathing were enacted. They flew drones over the enclosures and thought all of the animals were missing because they didn't spot any of them. So they began to assemble whoever you call to hunt animals that can hunt people. In reality, though, only the bear had escaped. I couldn't find a lot of details on the bear situation, but unfortunately it was fatally shot. The big cats, however, were found to still be in their enclosures. Apparently the drone just hadn't seen them. The cats saw the damage to the structures and were just like, nah, which if you think about it, is very much a cat thing to do. And that's all for this video. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to like, subscribe, comment on, or share this video. My next planned video is Great Animal Escapes Part 2, Primates. It should be more fun than about 12.83 barrels of monkeys. See you next time.